A popular saying among white society is, if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. And this, of course, is the working ethos of the white media. They do not necessarily have the power to tell people what to think, though through repetition, one could say that they probably do. But one thing is without question, the white media certainly has the ability to tell people what to think about. This is what brings us to Joe Biden. We'll be getting to Jocahontas Warren in the coming weeks, but as we get closer and closer to the first of the Democratic primaries, starting with the Iowa caucus, we see the white media attempting to try to position Joe Biden. They're going to go ahead and try to write a narrative for old Jim Crow Joe. This is part of the rehabilitation of Joe Biden's image. Because truth be told, he would be the guy who the white establishment would like, and you have no less than Jeff Bezos' own Inside the Beltway paper of record, the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die, trying to sell the soap. Headline, Biden appeals both to black voters and to white voters suspicious of Black Lives Matter. Now, Black Lives Matter hasn't been a political factor. They have not been relevant in years now. Ain't nobody been talking about Black Lives Matters. What the hell is that even supposed to mean? What exactly was Black Lives Matters about? It was a slogan, hardly a movement. And now they've been revealed, just like the ADOS movement, to be nothing more than a clumsy front for some sort of LGBT advocacy, and that's fine, but don't call yourselves Black Lives Matter. Say that LGBT lifestyles matter. But with Joe Biden, we have the Washington Post attempting to send messages to the rest of the white media and to the candidates, because as I've explained to you repeatedly, that is the purpose and that's part of the MO of the white media. They do not merely speak to the public, but the white media is also the primary way that white supremacy communicates within itself to get one another on code so that they can practice message discipline, so that they all know, oh, this is the message that we're all going to be carpet bombing the public with. We're going to be saturation bombing the public with this particular slant. Now, of course, being the white media, these guys think themselves too clever by half. They start off with a headline that actually mentions black voters first. But when talking about black voters, they speak in the same terms that are typical of white moderates, read casual racists. So what's the subject here? The subject is anything that might be advantageous to black people. I mean, where are these black voters at who are saying we don't like Black Lives Matters, even among the older black voters? And yet, when you actually read this so-called article, the first time that it actually talks about race, black or white, the first thing it points out is many observers have noted that Biden's supporters are a diverse coalition, including older white and black voters. Oh, so we've gone from mentioning black voters first to immediately mentioning white voters first. And then the article goes on to say, using data from our new survey, we found a new factor related to support for the former vice president, what white social scientists call white consciousness. White consciousness, is that some sort of clinical term? Give me a break. The article goes on to say Biden's support is high among older voters and those who believe deeply in the goodness of ordinary people, a completely and thoroughly unqualified term. Black voters appear to associate him with Barack Obama's presidency. Interestingly, white voters who measure high in racially resentful attitudes appear to see him as their representative as well. Yeah, I'll bet they do. We've already covered that. Joe Biden was big friends with racist segregationists back in the 60s and 70s. He was a staunch opponent of busing because of the fact that he was a staunch opponent of black people being anywhere near white society. In 1986, he was one of the main proponents of the 1986 Anti-Drug Abuse Act. That was the federal law that created the 100-to-1 sentencing disparity between powder cocaine and rock cocaine. And then he was the author of the 94 crime bill, or as Jim Crow Biden used to call it, Biden's Law, See, he's forgotten all about that. He's hasn't called it Biden's law in so long, people have forgotten. But the black media ain't forgotten. And it would appear that the casual racist vote, read white moderates, they haven't forgotten either. So, in a bit of accidental journalism, the Washington Post actually actually does something halfway accurate, but only by accident. Yes, there are white voters with racially resentful attitudes, and they're looking at Joe Biden and going, yeah, this guy, he's given the right code words, and he's already taken the right stance so that we know that no matter what his words are, we know what he actually believes. So that's the reason why you got that. So, what about this white consciousness thing? Well, as the Washington Post reports, white consciousness refers to a belief among whites that their status in American society is under threat and that they must use collective political action to overcome this threat. Now, the article goes on to basically give some pithy little comments about how white respondents answered to some survey questions that the Washington Post put to them. But basically, what it says over and over again is that we find that white consciousness is significantly associated with support for Biden. Then goes on to say, why is Biden uniquely appealing to Democrats who harbor high levels of white consciousness? Notice that they don't say bigotry or white racism or white discriminatory attitudes. They don't say that. Instead, it's white consciousness. Perhaps it's because of his long-standing political involvement dating to the 1960s. See, they don't say that he was best buds with segregationists. They don't say that he was against school busing. They don't bring up all of the racially inflammatory things he was saying back in the 70s. Instead, they say his long-standing political involvement. Notice the deliberately misleading sanitary language that they try to use. As the Democratic Party shifts leftward on immigration and race, when the hell they shifted leftward on race? I have no idea what the hell that's supposed to mean, and the Washington Post doesn't know either. Biden may remind Democratic voters of a time when other issues dominated the party's brand. Yeah, in other words, remember when the Democrats were hard right of center instead of mostly right of center? Remember the Democrats were so hard to the right that basically they gave Richard Nixon a run for their money. Remember when you could have Joe Biden against school busing and he could almost sway the Senate to his twisted point of view? Remember when Joe Biden could claim to be a good northern Yankee Democrat and yet he was one of the main sponsors of one of the most racist drug laws in human history? Remember when Joe Biden was the guy who wrote the 94 crime bill, Biden's Law, and turbocharged the prison industrial complex and bribed the state to the tune of almost $13 billion to change their own laws so they could get some free cash from Uncle Sam if they would change their laws to make them as draconian as Biden's law? Remember when he could do that and call himself a Democrat with a straight face and nobody called him on it? Yeah, that's what they mean by remind Democratic voters of a time when other issues dominated the party's brand. In other words, you guys, you're talking about reparations and such, and well, you may not want to make the white voters unhappy. And finally, they end it by saying it may be because of Biden's campaign behavior. As has been widely noted, Biden is a moderate, not a progressive firebrand. Now, you go ahead and you look at Biden's stance on school busing. Look at his strident and draconian stance with the 1986 Anti-Drug Abuse Act, a 100-to-1 difference between powdered cocaine and rock cocaine. That is not a moderate position. That is so far to the right you fell off a cliff. And he went not merely off a cliff, but straight to hell with the 94 crime bill, Biden's Law. But you got the Washington Post saying Joe Biden is a moderate. On what? When it comes to the issue of race, specifically black people, Joe Biden is as racist and right-wing as they come. He is not right of center. He is hard right. But the Washington Post is lying and calling him a moderate. He's not a progressive firebrand. Sure, I can agree with that. But he damn sure ain't no moderate. But this is the propaganda that the white media is putting out. Oh, Joe Biden, he's got really strong black support. He appeals to black voters. He appeals to black voters very strongly. Oh, he's got strong appeal to black voters. They keep repeating that in the hopes that if they just say it enough times, you'll believe it. Repetition is the mother of learning, but it's also the mother of false association, too. But Joe Biden understands that young black voters ain't drinking the Kool-Aid. The older ones, the low information voters, the ones who vote not because they actually look at the issues, but because it's kind of their habit. The ones most likely to show up and vote without actually asking any tough questions, as long as their social security checks show up on the first of the month, that's good enough for them. The future, what future? They weren't thinking about the future of their children when they were young. They're damn sure not thinking about the future now that they got one foot in the grave and the other leg dangling. So the older black voters will be useless at trying to move the needle back toward justice. Biden is an enemy of the black community. But you got the Washington Post trying to put forward this propaganda that, oh, you've got black voters who they agree with white voters. They don't like Black Lives Matters. Here's what the Washington Post decided that they would end their little misinformation article with. Biden straddles an interesting divide in the Democratic Party. He appeals strongly to black voters. Notice they don't tell you what percentage of black voters. He appeals strongly to black voters and to whites who don't identify with the Black Lives Matter bunch of the party. This bodes well for his chances of remaining a frontrunner, and if he is the eventual nominee, it may well boost his chances against the Republican candidate who explicitly appeals to voters high in white consciousness. Now, this is the same Washington Post who loves to try to accuse Donald Trump of race baiting. And while they are accurate about that, you've got nothing but a naked appeal to Democrats need to be going hard white, not hard right, hard white. This is not merely a suggestion from the Washington Post. This is a freaking blowhorn that they're using. Oh, you're too concerned with black people's lives. You're too concerned with listening to black people. Why? You don't have to be concerned about any of that black empowerment stuff because that's who they're talking about. They're not talking about Black Lives Matters. Otherwise, they'd be mentioning DeRay McKeeson, the irrelevant has-been. What they're really thinking about is all these black folks, especially the ones online who are getting black folks on code and who knocked Kamala Harris out of the box, and who have been strangling Cory Booker for support, and who Joe Biden's already looking and going, well, hell, if Kamala Harris was unable to get her sorority boule pals to get behind her and boost her chances of winning, then what's going to happen when I go to South Carolina? Maybe Jim Clyburn can help me out. Maybe not. But you got the Washington Post making it very clear, hey, now that we're getting closer to the actual primaries, you got to drop all of that support for anything that black people are saying. You can't be acknowledging reparations or tangibles for black people anymore. That's firebrand talk. We need a moderate. Now, notice that they don't ever call Donald Trump a moderate. Donald Trump is the president. He's not a moderate, but he is someone who appeals to voters with high white consciousness. And that you got to be able to understand how to actually parse what the white media says. They try to hide their point and bury it in a word salad, but if you look at what they say, you see what the actual point is. As Steve Bannon likes to say, separate the signal from the noise. The noise is all of this flowery language that they're trying to use, all of this verbal embroidery. The actual point that they make loud and clear is you need white consciousness. You need white people to like what you're saying. White people are not happy, and you need to make sure that white people's position is maintained at all costs, particularly at cost to black people. And, that whole black empowerment thing, Black Lives Matters is just used as a code phrase for us. When talking about black people, we're monolithic in their eyes. If you're talking about anything that even smacks of that, that's just basically a catch-all term. And you got to stop listening to those people, and you got to start making sure that you appeal to those white people, those resentful white voters. They're resentful and their resentment is justified. Nowhere in here does it point out that white people are still the majority of the student body in American universities. Even though they are in the middle of test scores, the Asians outscore them. But white people have an expectation that they're entitled to those things. There is no actual evidence that white people are being disadvantaged in the society. It's just that white people suffer from hyper anticipatory anxiety about their position as it relates to their race because they know that by and large, and all you got to do is read a history book to see this one, their position was not the result of their own hard work dent in industry. It was, as Abraham Lincoln put it, the superior position would be assigned to the white man. Abraham Lincoln said that. He didn't say anything about hard work, dent in industry would secure the white man a superior position. He said, I don't believe in the equality of the races. I believe the superior position should be assigned to the white man. Assigned. He didn't say that the superior position is the natural result of the white man's superior work ethic, his superior IQ, his superior knowledge, his superior sophistication and understanding of the world, and his common man. Well, the white man just knows more and just works harder. That's not what he said. He didn't say that at all. No mention of hard work at all. Just said we got to make sure this is fixed in place no matter what. And you got the Washington Post giving a naked proposal, just giving a naked endorsement of that exact same putrid ideal. So that's what's going on here. You got the Washington Post sending out the message, hey, Democrats, stop talking about all this stuff about black people. The white media is going to push the lie that, if any black people who start bringing up this black empowerment stuff or who start talking about you got to punish the police when they kill black people, all of that stuff, we're going to be the ones. We'll run interference for you. Don't worry. The white media will come to the rescue. We'll run interference and explain to people that, well, that's firebrand talk and you're not going to be able to get to the White House with that because, after all, don't make the white voters angry. They're already resentful. You want to make them even angrier? Why, that will drive them into the loving arms of Donald Trump. Now, never mind the fact that common sense would tell you that if you do, as if Joe Biden, who has been a lifelong anti-black racist, as if somehow he's going to suddenly discover religion. But even if old Jim Crow Joe actually does turn over a new leaf, and at this advanced age, does anybody see him changing any of his positions at this late date? The man's damn near in a freaking casket as it is. But let's go ahead and say that Joe Biden had a road to Damascus moment, huh? Do you think that those resentful white voters would be pleased with seeing him do what's right anyway? You think they'd look and say, we know what we said and we know what Joe Biden hinted and told us he was going to do, but we don't mind that he's actually doing right by black people. Why? We don't feel as if our anxiety about our position in society has been at all heightened because of it. Really? Are we supposed to be that naive? Or perhaps the Washington Post is that naive? So understand that this is a message being sent to the Democratic candidates and to the rest of the white media. Whenever any of the candidates start talking any of that black empowerment stuff, they start talking anything that seems advantageous to black people, let them know that's firebrand talk and let them know that's unelectable talk. You'll be unelectable. We're giving ourselves permission to just relegate that to the fringe. And if you start talking like that, you'll be fringe too. And you need to be concerning yourself with all of those resentful white voters and making sure that they're perfectly pleased with you, because what is it that they're resentful about? As far as they're concerned, their social position needs to be guaranteed. And isn't that what I told you happens to be the economic, social, and political glue that holds this white supremacist project together? What is white supremacy? It is a system of economic, political, and social guarantees, goodies, and giveaways that are assigned to those classified as Caucasian. And what you got the Washington Post doing is boldly advocating and promoting that, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And you better make sure that they don't feel as if their position is being threatened. Well, what's threatening their position? What the hell is it that's threatening their position? What the hell have they lost? They're not losing a damn thing. But as far as they're concerned, well, the fact that you even mention someone else, the fact that you even have anything of interest to black people that's made its way into the presidential discourse, that's a problem. Black people are supposed to be out of sight, out of mind. You're not supposed to actually be threatening to change things, especially not in a way that would advantage black people. After all, what good would it be to be white if black people are on an even economic and political keel with white people? You can't have that. So what we got to do is we got to make sure that the unlevel playing field remains unlevel. Who is dedicated to white primacy? The Washington Post damn sure is. This is the only conversation that is relevant to Jim Crow Joe Biden. But if anybody decides to bring up Joe Biden's track record, you better believe the white media will be sitting there trying to give out the talking points, and they've already mentioned what the talking points are going to be. They've already given you a preview of exactly what the slant is when it comes time to talk about Joe Biden. They're not going to be referring to Joe Biden as a friend of segregationists. They're not going to refer to him as being the Yankee version of Strom Thurmond. No, that's not how they're going to be describing Joe Biden. Instead, what they're going to be doing is exactly what the Washington Post has done. They're going to be using this very sanitized, very vaporous language talking about him. They'll be pointing out that he's a moderate. And well, he has long-standing political involvement. And it's his campaign behavior. Yeah, those are the words. Same way that the white media has decided to very quietly step back from calling Harvey Weinstein, whose trial begins tomorrow. They've stopped referring to him as the disgraced media mogul. And they've also decided, well, we're not even going to hint that the women that he raped are victims. Instead, Harvey Weinstein is simply, well, Harvey Weinstein goes on trial. Yet we're dropping any language that might at all seem to be accurate about him. And we're going to try to stay as far away from that as possible. We're trying to clean it up as possible. We need to distance him from all of those truthful modifiers and descriptors that tell you exactly who and what he really is and what he's actually done. So you do not have this groundswell of black people who are opposed to Black Lives Matters. That makes no freaking sense, but you got a lot of white folks who are. And the white media is attempting to sound the alarm that, hey, we're going to try this scam. We're going to say that, well, black people don't like Black Lives Matters either. So you can't say that the resentful white voters are somehow the fringe. They're not the fringe. It's these black people over here who are demanding justice for their people. That's the fringe. Joe Biden, he's not some mouth-frothing white supremacist. Why, he's a moderate. Well, how the hell is fighting against racial integration? How the hell is pushing a law that creates a 100-to-1 sentencing disparity that he knows is based on race? How is having a son who gets caught with drugs time and again and getting him off the hook while all the while demanding that street level dealers in D.C. should get life sentences for far less than what Hunter Biden's actually proven to have done? How is writing the most draconian criminal bill in human history? How the hell is that moderate? What is moderate about that? Moderate according to who? According to the editorial board at the Washington Post. So yes, as we are turning up the heat and cranking up the pressure on white supremacy, the white media is having to be more ultra with their language, and they will get more and more blatant and bold about it still. As we are making it where we are forcing the black agenda into the political discourse, as we are confronting candidates and confronting the white media's black flunkies, they're having to put out total and complete fiction like this. Because this is supposed to be their cover. When people say, hey, if you're sitting here being opposed to racial justice for the former slaves who built this country, that sounds racist to me. No, it's not. It's a moderate position. It is the moderate position. And, you can't, the truth is you can't win without those white voters. Well, white voters are not the base of the Democratic Party. Well, you really need to be appealing to them anyway. Well, we only need to appeal to a small number of them. That's the important thing. You need to be galvanizing that black vote because that's what's going to put you in the White House. Well, the issue is bigger than that. And if you get all narrow-sighted about it, why, you'll be handing the presidency to Donald Trump. Turning out the black vote is what handed the presidency to Barack Obama not once but twice. And he didn't win by a few votes like Donald Trump did. Barack Obama, it was a blowout 2 times. But the Washington Post is attempting to push back against that. And since they are the paper of record inside the Beltway, this is meant to be a bold message to the other candidates and to the rest of the white media. This is going to be the narrative media frame for the Democratic primaries. This is going to be it. It's time to put that black agenda genie back in the bottle. And we're going to start with Joe Biden because, hell, if we can get away with it with Joe Biden, it'll be a walk to get away with it for Bernie the bigot Sanders or for Pocahontas Warren. It'll be child's play to get away with it. See, white supremacy's always understood the necessity to be able to just throw it in people's faces. Yeah, you got a system for the in crowd and one for the out crowd, and we're making sure you understand that. People will be shocked and offended, but the truth of the matter is most of them ain't going to do a damn thing about it. So it actually serves a purpose to actually shock them and for them to see, oh my God, it really is like that. Yeah, because once you see that a system is completely and thoroughly slanted against you and you don't do anything about it, you have now given your acceptance of that system. You have now conceded, okay, I will now knowingly live under a system that is built to grind me into the dirt and to completely and thoroughly have a hands-off posture regarding the most undeserving, unwarranted individuals in the society. This is what's coming from the Washington Post. Black voters and white voters suspicious of Black Lives Matter. Suspicious of Black Lives Matter. The racial code words, these ain't even code words, just coming out and saying it. Suspicious of Black Lives Matters. On what grounds? The article doesn't even say what they're suspicious of. What are they suspicious of? You don't see any of them saying, I'm suspicious of Black Lives Matters. Well, what the world is there to be suspicious about? Well, when you start saying that the cops shouldn't be able to gun these niggers down with impunity, man, I feel that there's something strange about that. Why would you not want the cops to have carte blanche to kill these niggers? What's so suspicious? What is there to be suspicious about? Even if you don't like the shadowy influences, the money men behind Black Lives Matters, even if you don't like their pivot to LGBT, at least what they proclaim to be about, more or less, what is there to be suspicious about? Now that tells you everything you need to know. When you got the Washington Post trying to figure out how to intellectualize and how to put some sort of phony veneer of scholarship in front of their propaganda. Oh, well, we decided that we were going to do a survey. Oh, well, if it's a survey, then it must be scientific. No, the only thing that a survey tells you is that somebody took a survey. Maybe. But the Washington Post doesn't want to leave any sort of ambiguity about the racial slant that they are attempting to push this political election season into. They don't want to leave any questions about what direction they expect for the candidates and the white media to take. According to their article, they say that we conclude that 20% of the Democrats in our sample harbor high overall levels of white consciousness. A reminder that while Democrats may be in the midst of what Matt Yglesias at Vox called the Great Awakening, there's a wide gulf between the woke Democrats on Twitter and the average Democrat overall. Now, what the hell's wrong with this statement? First of all, 20% of Democrats, meaning 20% of white Democrats, because when you look at the questions, that's who the hell they were asking the questions of. We surveyed 2,094 white individuals, of whom 794, or roughly 38%, identified as Democrats. You see how many qualifiers we got there? They say 20% of Democrats. Yeah, but you sampled 2,000 people, And you had 794, only 38%, who said that they were Democrats. So don't say you talk to Democrats, say you talk to white Democrats. And then it says there's a wide gulf between the woke Democrats on Twitter and the average Democrat overall. Who the hell said that these white individuals were average Democrats? The base of the Democratic Party are black people, not these white folks, not these white individuals. So you got the Washington Post trying to redefine who qualifies as the average Democrat. This is a complete and thorough divorce from reality. But they make it very clear that, well, we're talking about these woke Democrats on Twitter. Now, I don't know who the hell the woke people are, but if they're talking about the professional agitators, then yeah, that would be the black media. And yes, what's been happening is you've been watching as things have gotten shooken up on social media. And we have been at the forefront of that. But what they're trying to say is you shouldn't be listening to these angry black voices, these people who are sitting here talking about reparations and talking about leveling the economic playing field and talking about making sure that black people get their fair share. There's a big gulf between them and that 20% of Democrats. 20% of Democrats. You're telling me that 20% of Democrats are somehow supposed to be the tail wagging the dog and we're supposed to just abide by that? Forget it. If you're going to be talking about the Democratic Party, you got to talk about black people. You're not going to redefine the Democratic Party as being a narrow 20% of white people who, by the Washington Post's own admission, happen to harbor racially resentful attitudes. Is this the direction the country should go in? Should the country decide to listen to some fringe minority of racially resentful white voices? Is that who the country should listen to? According to the Washington Post, yeah. At no point do they point out the Democrats are going to have to educate these white voters to check their privilege at the door. And tell them, remind these white voters you're not losing anything. Instead of trying to set white voters at ease and tell them you need to calm down and you guys are the fringe, you guys happen to be the outliers, you guys are outside the mainstream, I would think that 20% of racially resentful white people would qualify as a fringe, an outlier, and outside the mainstream by any definition, but not by the Washington Post. This is what they're putting out there, and they're trying to put some phony baloney survey as the proof of it. Now, this is the reason why you see me being very careful about what surveys I mention and which ones I don't. Because what happens is once you look at the so-called results of the survey, then it's time to put the right spin on it so you can get the numbers to say what you want. It's real simple, folks. In American politics, you happen to have on one side of the scale justice, as promoted by the black media speaking on behalf of the former slaves. And on the other side of the scale, you have white supremacy, as promoted and espoused by the Washington Post and as championed by Jim Crow Joe Biden. See, the white media thinks they're going to invalidate Joe Biden's racist past. And it's not because they like Joe Biden particularly. It's a matter of you got to stick up for Joe Biden because Joe Biden was carrying water for white supremacy. And if he goes down, well, there's going to be a whole lot of others who have to go down because they were right in there with him. See, there were a lot of things the white media was willing to take digs at Kamala Harris about, but they made sure they mentioned, the people who wanted to see Kamala Harris punished because she's a prosecutor. Well, not all prosecutors are bad, and not all prosecutors are bad, Now, they don't tell you how many are bad. They don't try to quantify that for you. They just say, well, not all. We should not be waging a war on prosecutors. At no point do they point out, the prisons are full and overflowing with people who shouldn't even be there. And these prosecutors are the ones putting cases on people. And that being the case, we need to be looking at these prosecutors and see how many of them are dirty, how many of them are out of control, how many of them are racist, and how many of them need to be in a cage. That's never the slant. The slant is always, the system may not be perfect, but it's the only one we got, and we got to abide by it, and you really shouldn't be questioning it. And what, do you want rampant niggers up and down the streets? That's usually how the white media narrative goes. Oh, it's okay to give a tisk tisk. Well, there are some prosecutors who aren't doing it right. When you look at how the prisons are full and overflowing, that the United States has the most people behind bars than any country on earth. I'm told that communist China is a police state. But the US has more people behind bars than China, and China has 6 times the population of the US. I'm told that Iran is a police state, but the US has more people behind bars than Iran. I'm told that North Korea is a police state, but the US has more people behind bars than North Korea. I'm told that Russia is some sort of totalitarian regime, but Vladimir Putin has less people behind bars than Donald Trump. So who's the police state? We don't need to be questioning the prosecutors. Yeah, that's exactly the position that I would expect the mouthpiece for official white power to take. You have the Washington Post not even hiding their white supremacist leanings at this point. They're showing you who they're in the pocket for, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to find a way to sanitize it and rationalize it and intellectualize it and glorify it and tell you that, well, this is just political pragmatism. This is realpolitik, don't you know? This is just politics in the real world. Yeah, because what's been happening is too many politicians have been saying the wrong thing. Too many of these politicians have been getting wobbly on the issue of making sure that you hold black people at bay when it comes to tangibles. Too many of these politicians, even though they've been saying that I'm not in favor of cash reparations, I'm not in favor of reparations at all, but we can look at it as just an intellectual exercise. Which, even if you want to take the most ridiculously asinine, glorified viewpoint of HR 40, if we want to look at rose fields through rose-colored glasses, if you really want to show me that you don't know what the hell you're talking about, go ahead and tell me that HR 40 is a sensible conversation for us to be having. But even if we were so stupid and silly as to do that, you cannot deny the fact that HR 40 does not go beyond merely a cursory glance at slavery. And yet you got politicians saying that they oppose reparations, but they don't mind looking at H.R. 40. Now, what does that tell you about H.R. 40? When Bernie Sanders can say in one breath, I am opposed to reparations. I am not in favor of it. It's a bad idea. It's not feasible, and I'm not for it. And then they say, what do you think about H.R. 40? Oh, well, yeah, H.R. 40. Sure. We can go in. I would support H.R. 40. Now, what does that tell you? What does Bernie Sanders know about H.R. 40? What does Sheila Jackson Lee know about H.R. 40 that the LGBT front group A-dunce doesn't seem to want to admit to? We got to get serious, family. You're not going to threaten white supremacy by doing things that white supremacy is in favor of. You threaten white supremacy by putting its back to the wall. You threaten white supremacy by kneecapping it and then making it where we got you on the ropes and we're going to keep you there. The white media is trying to give the candidates a bye and tell them, we'll help you fight your way out of this corner. And the propaganda is going to be flying high. What you've seen from the Washington Post here, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning of the coming flood of anti-black political dogmatism that's going to be coming our way from the white media. They're going to be trying to sanitize it and give themselves an excuse and say, why, this isn't racist at all. Sure, it's racially resentful white people, but there are black people who also share the exact same view, don't you know? And when you point out, well, you didn't actually say that black voters were suspicious of Black Lives Matter. Well, the white voters who don't like Black Lives Matters, they like Joe Biden. And black voters support Joe Biden, and well, we just don't want Joe Biden to lose that white support, because after all, the orange man will get reelected, and well, isn't that the real issue? Not for black empowerment, it ain't. We don't give a damn who's in the White House as long as we get our tangibles. Donald Trump is not going to offer us tangibles, hence we are not supporting him. But we're not going to be supporting anybody with a D in front of or behind their names unless they support our tangibles. That is the only issue that matters in 2020. And if the racially resentful white voters don't like it, well, then that's their problem. But we're not going to allow any sort of verbal trickery to get in the way of our agenda. We're not going to allow the white media to try to sanitize the not so benign neglect, the malignant neglect of Black empowerment in the Black community. We're not going to allow that anymore. And as for those older Black voters who, as far as they're concerned, they saw Joe Biden standing next to the first gay LGBT biracial president, and their hearts go pitter-pat because the Black baby boomers conditioned themselves to live lives of aspirational success. They couldn't actually get it on their own. They weren't willing to fight for it. They damn sure weren't willing to stand on it. So they lived their entire lives vicariously through actors and athletes and singers. And when they saw Barack Obama, well, who needs empowerment? We finally saw a sorta Black candidate who became president, and well, we're living vicariously through him, and oh lordy, we'd have made it to the promised land. Forget that. It ain't about Barack Obama. It's about you and me. It's not about success for some hand-picked tool of white supremacy. It is about success and power in the hands of the former slaves. Joe Biden only appeals to a small handful of dumb elderly Negroes and a couple of other fools of various factions who identify more with what they do in the bedroom or more with what their immigrant family members hail from than they do with actual Black empowerment. That's fine. But the truth of the matter is Joe Biden's not making it to the White House without the Black vote. It is not resentful white people who are a small handful who ain't going to matter a damn on election day anyway. They're not the ones who are going to get into the White House. And we're not going to ignore that reality just because the Washington Post said to ignore it. We're not taking our cues from Jeff Bezos. We're not taking our cues from the Washington Post. We're not taking our cues from the white media. We're damn sure not taking our cues from the phonies, fakers, and frauds, these foolish Black sock puppets for the white media who are going to get out there and say, well, you know, Joe Biden, my aunt Gracie, my aunt Sapphire, she just loves her some Joe Biden. And well, you know, there's a lot of Black folks who remember that Joe Biden was the vice president of Barack Obama. And that's going to mean something on election day. That's going to mean something on election day. Just remember, this is the same white media whose Black flunkies just 6 months ago were saying that Kamala Harris's secret weapon was that she was a prosecutor, and her secret weapon was her sorority. Lots of secret weapons that Kamala Harris said apparently had. According to the white media, she allegedly had all these secret weapons. But her being destroyed by the Black media, that was anything but a secret. The Black media seemed to have all the right tools to neutralize Kamala Harris's secret weapons. And now what we see is them pushing a two-pronged narrative with Joe Biden. He's got Black voter support. Oh, he appeals to Black voters. No, the only appeal that he will have is going to be coming when you look at those Black voters in the southern states. Even if you make it to South Carolina, so the hell what? South Carolina is not the end-all and be-all of the Black vote. This is the white media attempting to create some sort of inevitability narrative. That, oh, if Joe Biden can get to South Carolina, why, those Black voters are just going to swoon for him and they shall fall at his feet. And why, like dominoes, the rest of these niggers will show up to the polls because they'll understand that there's just this tidal wave and it's got to be Joe and can't have Donald Trump. And stop listening to that Black media, those angry people on Twitter, those people on Twitter that you're seeing, they don't know the reality. And the truth is the white voters are what counts. You see, there's a big gulf between those angry Black folks on Twitter and the average Democrat. Notice the wording they use, average. They can't say the majority of Democrats. They cannot say the Democratic base because that's the Black vote. So instead they say average Democrat. No, below average in numbers, below average in intellect, below average in morality. The Black vote is not going to be swayed. Richard Nixon said this game isn't played by the rules, it's played by the headlines. Yeah, but the question is, whose headlines are people reading? If you're trying to appeal to white voters who in many cases have already made up their minds, then sure, I guess what the Washington Post says matters. But the problem is, most of those white voters have already decided who they're going to vote for. White women already decided that as soon as Donald Trump made it clear that he was going to be fighting for white primacy, he could grab as many white women by the crotch as he wanted. He could be accused of every act of sexual depravity. He could cheat on his wives as much as he wanted to. He could sleep around. He could brag about his womanizing and his philandering and his sexual predation all he wanted. White women were concerned with whether or not he was going to preserve white people's guarantees, goodies, and giveaways. If he did that, as far as they were concerned, hey, those are personal issues between you and those porn stars. And we'll overlook that because we got our eye on the ball. Well, guess what? The same ethos is at work when it comes to the black community now. Black media is getting black folks on code. I don't give a damn who the hell comes up to me with the tangibles. I'll take my tangibles from Joe Biden if he's offering them, but he's already said, I ain't offering no tangibles. Well, then my vote is not on the table. If Donald Trump shows up with tangibles, great, but he's made it clear he ain't doing that either. Well, then, bastard ain't getting my vote. I don't give a damn who shows up with the tangibles, but here's the thing. I don't show up with the vote without tangibles. And no, I don't vote down ballot because I'm not stupid. I don't give a damn if you're the dog catcher. If I don't hear you bringing tangibles, if I do not hear you expressing and promoting and just aggressively pushing that black agenda, if I don't hear this kind of real talk without dilution or admixture, if you're coming along and kind of sort of talking like this, but out of one side of your mouth and out of the other side of your mouth, here comes the same old Democrat line, then I ain't with that. I don't give a damn if you're showing up calling yourself part of the freaking school board. I don't care what political office you claim to be running for. I better be hearing about those tangibles. I better hear your plan for my tangibles. If I tell you that my tangibles must be on the ballot before I vote for you, and the first thing you do is you make it very clear that the black agenda, tangibles for the former slaves, is something that you're embarrassed about, and well, don't say it so loud, and well, I don't know about all that, and you start making it clear that you're more interested in currying the favor of racially resentful white voters as opposed to the morally righteous and the morally wronged black voters, then forget it. I'm not overlooking tangibles just because you come up with some ridiculous scare talk. I am not motivated by fear. I am motivated by incentive. And no, you're not going to tell me that the orange man, I should be more scared of the orange man than I am of whether or not I get my tangibles. You get my freaking tangibles, and I ain't worried about the orange man. They're the ones who are trying to get us to give our support to this white supremacist system that's been grinding us into the dirt. They're the ones who need us to validate whether or not we still are conceding obedience and support to the results of this white government. See, they're the ones who need our votes. We don't need to have Joe Biden in any political office. We didn't need to have Kamala Harris in any political office. Any trained monkey can go ahead and cast their vote in the Senate or the House of Representatives, or can go ahead and sign a piece of legislation on the president's desk, or veto legislation that is deleterious to our interests. Any trained monkey can do what it is that we're telling them to do. God knows they've had a bunch of empty-headed puppets doing exactly what interested white parties have wanted them to do. So no, Joe Biden's not anything special any more than Yang is or Pocahontas Warren. These people are not special. They need to understand it's about that vote. That black vote is special because you're not going to be finding any replacement for that. As Joe Biden clumsily tries to put together his political coalition, and the white media clumsily tries to bestow their rhetorical blessing on it. Why, these people, these white voters with these racially resentful attitudes, don't call them casual racists. What you should call them instead is they've just got a high level of white consciousness. They've got a high level of white consciousness. Yeah, just like the white slave owners who established the United States. Yeah, kind of like that. Trying to sanctify white racist group behavior is what's going on here. And this is what's coming from the so-called leftist media. So this is what's coming from the Washington Post. You can only imagine what's going to be coming soon from, say, the Dallas Morning News, what's going to be coming from the New York Slimes, the LA Times, what's going to be coming from USA Today, what's going to be coming from the other periodicals and magazines, what's going to be coming from the cable news networks. This is how the pivot begins. The signal is being sent now. Go ahead and just flat out lie and say, well, this whole thing about Joe Biden distancing himself from those angry black voices on Twitter, well, those guys are all a bunch of kooks and weirdos, and black people don't mind having their interests ignored. Why, the Washington Post put out an article saying that black people love Joe Biden so much they don't give a damn whether or not he does anything for them. But white voters, they're making it very clear that they've got high white consciousness, and you better be concerned with what they want. You better make sure that they're perfectly pleased with you, and you better not, they don't want to see any of their guarantees, goodies, and giveaways threatened. Well, what does that mean, threatened? Well, there is an enormous gulf between what they have and what black people have, and the system works for whites and doesn't work for black people, and you better not change that. No matter how much pressure these angry, woke Democrats on Twitter try to put on you. No matter how much they may embarrass and humiliate you in public, no matter how much they may confront you when it comes to the black agenda, you don't want to let them be the ones that sway you, because after all, they're not the average Democrat. Yeah, but they are the Democratic base. Well, there are things more important than winning the election, You don't want to send the country the message that the Democratic Party has gone off a cliff. Well, what about Donald Trump? Hasn't he gone off a cliff? Notice how the position that happens to be advantageous to the white status quo, that's never the kook position. That's never the unpopular position. That's never the losing position. That's never the losing position. That's never the fringe, no matter how ridiculous it is. That's never the fringe. Well, it's just an unfortunate reality. Yeah, as the white numbers become smaller and smaller and smaller, you would think that it would also become less and less relevant. Even the white media would get the memo, but they haven't. Because this is not about their numbers any more than it was and is in South Africa. This is not about their numbers. This is about getting their way. So family, you take a look at what the so-called liberal paper of record inside the Beltway just got through saying. And even if you don't take good note of it, that's okay. You won't have to. You'll be seeing plenty more in the coming months. As the primaries get underway, this is going to be intensifying as the white media attempts to talk for us and attempts to say that they try to put words in our mouths and claim that black voters, they don't mind being ignored. They certainly don't. They don't trust those angry voices on Twitter any more than white people do. Why? Everyone agrees that those angry Twitter voices are just some kook fringe, and we need to put white voters' interests first. Yeah, Jeff Bezos, Fox News couldn't have said it any better than that.